£200 budget phones are usually incredibly dull, for the most part cookie cutter, copy and paste jobs with no soul, no defining characters, and nothing interesting of note. It's the type of phone most manufacturers use as a tick box exercise to deliver the bare minimum it can get away with and move on. But that's left a bit of a gap for something different. Enter the CMF Phone 1 by Nothing. I'm Cam Bunton, this is Trusted Reviews, and this is the first interesting £200 phone I've seen in a very long time. Okay, so technically it's £209, but the point remains. Nothing is trying to make the boring, low-end phone market a little interesting, and it's doing it by making the design engaging and fun and actually attractive. Now, one part of that is the removable back casing. So instead of your usual case where you just peel off and snap on a protective piece of plastic over the top of the rear surface, the removable case is actually the back of the phone. There are 5 screws dotted around the perimeter of the phone's edges. 4 of them are just standard screws with a groove in for a flathead screwdriver. The 5th is one that looks like a little scroll wheel in the bottom right corner. Unscrew all of these, take the SIM tray out, and you can wrestle off the back panel and snap on a different colour one before screwing it back in place. Now, I won't pretend it's not a fiddly process, it is. The grooves for the screwdriver are shallow and hard to get good purchase on, plus the screwdriver tool that you get with the case itself is tiny and hard to get a solid grip on. It also takes some force to get the case off once all the screws are out. It's not as simple as I thought it would be. But as fun and cool as the idea is, there's some practical benefits to it as well. Like back in the Nokia 3310 days, if your phone is dropped and the case gets cracked or damaged, you could just buy a new case, replace the back for relatively little money without having to go through an expensive phone repair. And if anything on the inside needs fixing, being able to take the back off without heat guns to melt any glue or needing to pry the phone apart with tools is a big plus, even if the components themselves are covered and out of sight. But the rear case isn't the only customization available. The wheel screw, called the accessory point at the bottom, also makes it possible to attach a variety of other accessories. There's a lanyard hook if you want it, or a kickstand for watching videos or making hands-free calls, and even a magnetic backplate that comes with a magnetic card wallet. These all cost £19 each. The cases costs £29. Now, the downside of a non-sealed unit is that it's not incredibly water resistant. It's only water resistant to IPX2 levels, which means it can only cope with very mild spray, and only if it lands on the phone vertically. Otherwise, for a phone this size, there's a reassuring rigidity to the frame of the phone. It's nice and slim too, but it is large, so it does mean some stretching required if you want to use it one-handed. But it looks and feels more premium than the price point suggests that it would be. And that's not the only part of this phone that outperforms its price tag. In fact, comparing the performance and features to other devices, it feels like an absolute bargain. So continuing that feel of getting a lot for your money, there's a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display here with 120Hz adaptive refresh rates. Not adaptive to the same level as the high-end phones, but still adaptive. That refresh rate actually is the first area of the phone experience I felt didn't quite match up to the spec sheet or the promise from the company. Because while it might technically be able to reach 120 refreshes per second, the actual animation on quick gestures like swiping the app drawer or swiping to go home or the notification shade, it's not always completely smooth. But then when you remember how little this phone costs, it's not surprising that there's some frame dropping and stutter creeping in when you ask it to animate quickly and with fluidity. The other area it shows the accessible price is the oleophobic abilities. I noticed some oily fingerprint smears on the glass and some subtle rainbow effects where my finger was swiping. It's not massive, not a major issue, but just another little reminder that this is not a £1,000 flagship phone. It is a decent display though. On the whole, it's really bright, it's got good colours, it's vibrant, and the dark parts of the image are really nice and inky and deep. And with peaks up to 2000 nits and typical brightness up to 700, it's easily visible in most conditions, only really struggling a little with bright direct sunlight reflecting off the surface. Otherwise, I'm really happy binge watching my favourite YouTube channels or Netflix shows on this phone. There wasn't any real issues with it. Plus, it has a built-in optical fingerprint sensor in the display which works about as well as any other optical fingerprint sensor. Now, nothing software with its monochromatic color and bold retro iconography and typefaces are unique to the company, and I love that, as I love all of the consistently themed useful widgets that fit in with that aesthetic. There is a little bit of a weakness in that nothing doesn't support you with software updates for a long time. You only get 2 major updates and 3 security patches, but again, that's pretty much expected at this type of price point. But moving on to speak general performance, and it's important to temper expectations with any accessible device. It will still run just about any game you'd like to play with the MediaTek Dimensity 7300 processor inside, just not in their extreme or ultra graphics settings. For casual games, it's definitely good enough. I was able to churn through a solid half an hour of Mario Kart's 2-in-1 sitting, and the phone didn't get warm, didn't get stuttery or slow, and for the most part the image didn't really lose any quality. The other side of this though is that it'll drain more battery than a lot of the more expensive efficient phones will. Nothing says this phone will last about 2 days on a full charge, and with light use I think that's possible. I'm usually quite a light user, but I managed to get almost to the end of a second day before reaching for my charger because I was panicking it was going to run out. But I wouldn't say it's definitely a 2-day battery. Standby time is excellent. A full morning of doing nothing will only drain a couple of % from the capacity, but start using it for WhatsApp or social media and that's where I saw the drain. Still, that 30-minute Mario Kart session I mentioned earlier only dropped 6% of the battery, and an hour streaming Netflix non-stop only drops about 8 or 9%, which actually isn't that bad. But as for charging it up again after it empties, that is a weak point. After 30 minutes plugged into a fast charger, the phone only refilled about 35% of its battery. It took me nearly 2 hours to do a complete 1 to 100% refill. But let's move on to cameras now. And the CMF Phone 1's camera system does feel like something of a throwback to previous times. Cast your mind back to some of the first phones with dual camera systems, phones like the HTC One M8 from 2014. These had a main camera and a depth sensor camera, instead of featuring an ultra-wide or a zoom. The idea being that it can help detect depths between objects, so enables an effective portrait mode where your subject is in focus at the front, but separated from the background cleanly with lots of blurry bokeh in the background. And the actual look of this blur in the portrait mode is actually really nice. It's smooth without any weird artifacts or swirls, but despite that extra lens, it still struggles a little with edge detection. It's one of those classic instances where if you have any flyaways in your hair, it'll include those, plus any background in the gaps between in the foreground objects, so those bits don't get blurred. It also did seem to get confused with reflections on objects as well. But otherwise it's hard to criticize the camera system too much, purely because of, again, how little this phone costs. The one single camera that actually does something useful is a pretty strong performer. It's a 50 megapixel camera and can take sharp, color-rich shots in the daytime with plenty of contrast and saturation for those attractive shots that you want to share on social media. And it takes them quickly, with very little, if any, trouble with motion blur, even when light levels drop a little. Now, I've shot photos with unsteady hands and while walking, and the images generally come out in focus and sharp. And because it's got a high-resolution sensor, it's got a pretty effective 2x digital zoom too, getting you that bit closer to the action without needing a dedicated zoom camera. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't benefit from a dedicated zoom camera, it would, because the details on those 2x zoom images are definitely not quite as good as when you're using the 1x regular mode. For a lot of textures and objects, it's actually not that noticeable in the daytime, but when looking at the textures in visually complicated things like trees and bushes, it's here that there's some processing going into making some of that information up on the fly, or removing some of the complex textures. It just looks a bit artificial, and in low light it gets grainy, noisy, and quite rough looking. Now, this is admittedly quite nitpicky of me, which actually is a good thing for this phone, because the fact I have to be this way with this phone just shows what a bargain it is. Similarly, it does have some issues with HDR and balancing out highlights and shadows. In an effort to keep the bright sky looking detailed in all of its cloudy, dramatic glory, the shadow foreground objects can become completely dark and crushed. Images at nighttime also often come out looking over-sharpened, very contrasty, and with a white balance that seems to be trying to turn the night scene into day, by making surfaces and objects that are actually warm to the eye look really cool, blue, and almost white. Video capture is decent enough too in daytime. It's still a bit saturated and contrasty, but it's good enough for the purposes of sharing with friends and on social media. It's worth noting, however, that the phone is limited to 30 frames per second for 4K capture and can only shoot 60 frames per second if you're willing to drop to 1080p. Now, speaking broad strokes, I've come away from my time with the CMF Phone 1 really impressed. Most of the things I had issues with or that I found imperfect were things I'd expect to see and would generally be okay with in a phone that cost anywhere between £300 and £400 in the UK. But this phone costs much less. With its large, vibrant display, the reliable everyday performance, the attention to detail and the cohesion and the software aesthetic and the camera quality, it's a phone I'd happily use as my daily phone without too many issues. And that's a huge testament to what Nothing has achieved in a phone that costs as little as this one does. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, or you can get me on social media. I'm at Cam Bunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap that notification bell. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.